The day began like any other in the ITV studios. Bright lights, polished floors, and Lorraine Kelly's familiar cheer filling the air. The team moved with that electric nervousness that only comes before a big broadcast. Today's guest was Prince Harry, and expectations were sky high. Weeks of preparation had led to this moment. What nobody anticipated was that it would soon spiral into one of the most explosive live interviews in British television history. Like before we move on, don't forget to hit subscribe button. As the theme music faded, Lorraine turned to the camera with her trademark smile. "Good morning, everyone," she said brightly. "I'm thrilled to be joined by Prince Harry to talk about his new charity work." The audience clapped warmly as the Duke of Sussex took his seat opposite her. Dressed in a relaxed blazer, he looked calm enough, but there was tension in the way his hands gripped the armrests, his smile tight around the edges. The conversation began pleasantly, gliding through Harry's projects and his foundation's goals. Lorraine, ever the professional, guided him effortlessly. Yet beneath the charm, she sensed unease. Harry's answers were polished but guarded, and the subtle flickers in his expression betrayed frustration beneath the surface. She leaned forward slightly, her tone soft but probing. "You've often spoken about service and sacrifice," she said. "How does your current lifestyle in California align with those values?" Harry's smile faltered. "My values haven't changed," he said, voice steady but sharper now. "Service isn't tied to geography." The audience barely noticed the tension, but Lorraine did. She'd seen that shift before. When a guest began to feel cornered, she pressed on. "Of course, but some viewers might see a contradiction between your criticism of the royal institution and your continued use of your title in business ventures." The air in the studio thickened. Harry's posture stiffened. "I think you're merging two separate issues," he replied. "My title is part of who I am, just as speaking out about harmful systems is part of who I am. I won't apologize for either." Lorraine's expression didn't waver, but her tone grew firmer. "I understand that, but when you speak about privacy while signing multi-million-pound deals with media companies, some people find that difficult to square." That question landed like a spark in a dry field. Harry's polite mask cracked. "That's unfair," he said, his voice rising. "We're telling our story on our own terms, not letting tabloids twist it." Lorraine, cool and measured, countered, "But you are selling it, aren't you? You're monetizing your privacy while condemning others for invading it. Can you see why that appears contradictory?" Harry's restraint snapped. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he shot back. "You sit here judging me from your studio while I've lived through things you can't even imagine." The insult stung, but Lorraine didn't back down. Her accent sharpened with emotion. "I've spoken to people who've suffered far worse and faced it with grace, not constant grievance. You're not the only one who's had a difficult life, Harry." Harry leaned forward, eyes flashing. "Is that what you call this? Grace? You invited me here under false pretenses to humiliate me." "False pretenses?" Lorraine's voice rose. "You came here to talk about your work. I asked legitimate questions. That's called journalism, accountability, something you seem to avoid since moving to your California mansion." Harry's anger flared. "Don't lecture me about accountability. Where was yours when the media destroyed my mother? Where was your integrity then?" The mention of Princess Diana sucked the air from the room. Lorraine's composure trembled but held. "That's out of line," she said. "I've spent my career treating people with respect, not exploiting them." Harry scoffed. "You're all part of the same machine. You pretend to be better, but you're just as complicit." "How dare you?" Lorraine snapped, her patience finally fraying. "I've never ambushed a guest or profited from tragedy. If you can't handle questions about your own contradictions, maybe you're not ready for public life." "I was born into public life," Harry shouted, rising slightly from his chair. "I didn't choose it. It was forced on me. I'm trying to protect my family from the same fate that killed my mother." The room was electric with tension. Lorraine's eyes hardened. "Your mother would be ashamed of what you've become," she said quietly. The words hit like a blow. Harry froze, color draining from his face. "How dare you presume to know what my mother would think," he said, voice trembling with fury. "You didn't know her. You're just another vulture feeding on her memory." Lorraine stood now, her voice steady but cold. "I may not have known her, but I know she valued dignity and duty, qualities you've forgotten." "You sanctimonious hypocrite," Harry began, but Lorraine cut him off. "Enough. This interview is over." Harry ripped off his microphone, the shriek of feedback echoing through the studio. "This is exactly why I left this miserable country," he spat. "Petty people with petty minds." "Security," Lorraine said calmly. "Please escort the prince off set." "You're throwing me out?" Harry said, incredulous. "You're really doing this?" "I'm removing a rude guest," she replied coolly. "Your title doesn't give you the right to behave like a spoiled child." The audience sat frozen as security stepped forward. Harry straightened, glaring. "You'll regret this," he said bitterly. Lorraine looked him dead in the eye. "No," she said softly. "I won't." Harry stormed out, his handlers trailing behind. Lorraine turned back to the camera, face composed, voice calm. "Well," she said lightly, "that was unexpected. After the break, we'll be speaking with Mrs. Henderson about her wonderful work with rescue cats." The crew moved like ghosts, resetting the stage, still stunned. Everyone knew they'd just witnessed something unforgettable. The moment Britain's beloved presenter stood her ground against a prince, and won. When the cameras cut to commercial, the studio fell into a heavy silence. The audience remained frozen in their seats, unsure whether to applaud or slip out quietly. Lorraine exhaled slowly, her face still composed but her hands trembling slightly beneath the desk. Her producer rushed over, whispering urgently in her ear, but Lorraine waved him off. "We'll finish the show," she said softly. "No drama, keep it moving." Behind the scenes, chaos had erupted. Harry's team was in a frenzy, demanding the footage be pulled, arguing with ITV staff about editorial control. The security team stood by the doors, impassive. Through the glass, Harry could be seen pacing the corridor, his expression stormy, his handlers trying in vain to calm him down. Every few seconds he gestured angrily toward the studio, his voice muffled but unmistakably furious. Lorraine sat alone at the desk, adjusting her papers, her professionalism reasserting itself piece by piece. When the red light blinked back on, she smiled at the camera as if nothing had happened. "Welcome back," she said smoothly. "We've had quite a morning, but that's live television for you. Now let's move on to something that will lift everyone's spirits." Her tone was steady, her warmth returning with practiced ease, but anyone watching closely could see the faint tremor in her smile. The remainder of the show passed in a blur. Guests came and went, the usual mix of lifestyle chatter and heartwarming features, yet a strange energy hung over everything. Crew members exchanged glances, the audience whispered among themselves, and phones across the country began to buzz as clips from the explosive interview began to circulate online. Within minutes, hashtags were trending, headlines flashing across social media feeds. Lorraine versus Harry, the clash that stunned Britain. By midday, every network was replaying the footage. Commentators analyzed every glance, every word, every flicker of emotion. Was Lorraine too harsh? Was Harry out of line? The public was divided, but one thing was certain. Nobody could stop talking about it. Inside ITV, the mood was electric. Executives huddled in conference rooms, torn between panic and exhilaration. The segment had already broken viewing records. Lorraine, meanwhile, sat quietly in her dressing room, sipping tea as makeup artists cleaned the last traces of foundation from her face. When her producer poked his head through the door, she looked up, calmly. "Well?" she asked. "You've just made television history," he said with a grin that was half disbelief, half admiration. Lorraine sighed, setting down her cup. "I didn't set out to," she murmured. "I just asked the questions people wanted answered." Outside the studio, reporters gathered like moths to flame. Statements were being drafted, damage control already underway. Prince Harry's representatives issued a terse release within the hour, describing the interview as deeply disrespectful and a breach of trust. ITV responded with equal restraint, defending their host and affirming that the interview had been conducted in the spirit of open, honest journalism. By evening, the footage had gone viral across every major platform. Some hailed Lorraine as fearless, a champion of accountability in an age of celebrity sensitivity. Others accused her of cruelty, claiming she'd crossed a line with her final remark about Diana. Public opinion fractured sharply, the nation choosing sides as talk shows, newspapers, and social media exploded with debate. Lorraine, ever the professional, refused to fan the flames. She issued a brief statement thanking viewers for their concern and reminding them that robust conversations are part of healthy public discourse. But those who knew her best sensed the weight of what had unfolded. She'd stood her ground, yes, but it had come at a cost. As the sun set over London, Lorraine stepped outside into the cool evening air. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Calls from producers, journalists, even friends from across the industry. But she let it ring. For a moment, she just breathed, looking up at the city skyline that had framed her career for decades. Somewhere out there, Harry was likely doing the same, both of them replaying the confrontation in their minds, wondering where conviction had tipped into chaos. It had been one of those rare moments when television peeled back its glossy surface to reveal something raw, unfiltered, and human. Two people, both shaped and scarred by the media in different ways, had collided in front of millions. And in that collision, something bigger had been laid bare. The uncomfortable truth about fame, accountability, and the price of telling one's story. For Lorraine Kelly, it would go down as the most unforgettable morning of her career. For Prince Harry, it would become another chapter in his long and complicated relationship with the British press. And for everyone watching, it was a reminder that even in a world of carefully managed appearances, sometimes the most powerful moments are the ones nobody plans. By the following morning, the fallout had reached global proportions. Every major network, from the BBC to CNN, replayed the footage on loop, dissecting the confrontation frame by frame. Newspapers splashed it across their front pages, headlines screaming variations of "Royal Fury on Live TV" and "Lorraine, Kelly faces down the prince." Social media had become a battlefield. Hashtags trended, alliances formed, and the interview was being debated in pubs, offices, and breakfast tables across Britain. Public reaction split cleanly down the middle. Some viewers applauded Lorraine's courage, praising her for standing her ground and asking the hard questions no one else dared to. They called her fearless, the last real journalist on British television, and a national treasure who refused to be cowed by privilege. Others, however, accused her of cruelty, of exploiting Harry's pain for ratings, and of crossing an invisible line when she invoked his mother's name. ITV's switchboards lit up with complaints and compliments alike. Opinion columns sprouted overnight. Was Lorraine right to challenge the prince? While radio hosts argued furiously with callers who defended Harry as a man unfairly persecuted by the press. By mid-afternoon, the network had issued a formal statement reaffirming support for Lorraine Kelly and her team. "The Lorraine Show," it read, "has always aimed to foster open, authentic conversations. Yesterday's interview was no exception." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the story took on a new dimension. American outlets framed Harry as the victim of yet another British media ambush, portraying Lorraine as a symbol of the hostile press he'd long condemned. Celebrity talk shows dissected the footage, commentators weighing every word and expression. For Harry and Meghan, who had built their public narrative around control and self-definition, this incident was a public relations disaster, one that seemed to confirm the very contradictions his critics often pointed out. At Frogmore Cottage, where the royal household was still reeling from the spectacle, official sources declined to comment. But privately, insiders whispered that even Buckingham Palace had been shocked by Harry's outburst. One aide reportedly said, "He's not just burned bridges, he set fire to the whole kingdom." Lorraine, on the other hand, maintained her usual poise. She arrived at the studio the next morning as though nothing had happened, exchanging polite greetings with her crew and calmly reviewing the day's lineup. But behind the controlled exterior, even she couldn't ignore the magnitude of what had unfolded. Her producer handed her a tablet showing millions of views across multiple platforms. "You've gone viral in every time zone," he said. She smiled faintly. "Not exactly how I'd have chosen it." When the live broadcast began, she addressed the controversy briefly, her tone measured and dignified. "Yesterday's conversation has sparked a lot of discussion," she said, looking directly into the camera. "That's the nature of open dialogue. It's not always comfortable, but it's always necessary. We wish Prince Harry and his family the best in their continued charitable work." Then, with practiced grace, she transitioned to a segment about community volunteers, restoring calm to a world still buzzing with chaos. Behind the scenes, however, Lorraine's colleagues couldn't stop talking about her composure. "You made history," one of the makeup artists whispered as she touched up Lorraine's foundation during a break. Lorraine gave a small laugh. "Or television trouble, depending on who you ask." That evening, in her quiet home overlooking the Thames, Lorraine finally allowed herself a moment of reflection. She watched the replay of the interview, the rising tension, the unguarded flashes of anger, the breaking of royal decorum, and saw not just two people clashing, but two worlds colliding. A man who had fled the institution that defined him, desperate to reclaim his voice, and a journalist defending the integrity of her craft. It had never been about winning or losing. It was about truth, pride, and the impossible space between them. Across the ocean, Harry released a short video statement filmed from his California home. His tone was calm but icy. "I stand by everything I said," he declared. "I won't apologize for demanding honesty, even when it makes people uncomfortable." But despite his defiance, there was something weary in his eyes, as though the confrontation had taken more out of him than he was willing to admit. For weeks, the interview dominated headlines. Commentators compared it to Frost, Nixon, Oprah's royal revelations, even Diana's famous panorama appearance. Think pieces explored what it said about power, privilege, and Britain's complicated relationship with its monarchy. Through it all, Lorraine carried on as usual, polite, witty, and unflappable, her audience growing larger than ever. Months later, when the noise had finally subsided, she would look back on that morning not as a scandal, but as a turning point. For her, for Harry, and perhaps even for the nation's conversation about truth and accountability. It had started like any other broadcast, a cheerful morning chat over coffee and headlines. But by the time the cameras stopped rolling, it had become something far more consequential. A collision of candor and entitlement that exposed in real time the fragile boundary between personal pain and public scrutiny. And as Britain replayed that moment over and over, the question lingered long after the lights dimmed. Who in the end had truly won? If you like this video, then subscribe.